Congresswoman, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Are you going to have a seat to run for, do you think, when Republicans finish redrawing the lines?
Absolutely. You know, the thing is my constituents aren't moving, right? I still represent the same people, whatever the line, the box drawn around them, is. And so whether it's a Democratically favored seat or if it's a Republican favored seat, I adore my constituents. It's my privilege to represent them, and I'm going to continue to fight for that opportunity.
And you know, this used to be a Republican seat years ago, before Colin Allred, when Pete Sessions had it. The lines were different then, but what do you expect proposed maps to look like for your seat?
Well, you know, there's a lot of versions out there. You know,
right.
Everyone has become an expert map maker, and every single map version is different. You know, I kind of look to the Cook Reports map a lot. Dave Wasserman, he's a lot of experience in redistricting and knows data really well. But the reality of it is Republicans are going to have a really hard time redistricting all of these Democrats out of Dallas County. And
you think so?
I do. I think it's because, you know, there's a whole bunch of us and there's a lot of people voting. You know, I won my election by almost 24 points. You know, Jasmine Crockett wins hers by over 30 points. Mark Vesey wins his in the same margin. So obviously we have a lot of folks voting Democrat in our districts, and to make that big of a shift, to take a Democratic seat that wins by 24 into a Republican-leaning seat, that means you're going to have to materially weaken all of the Republican seats around us in order to do that. And we're just going to have a bunch of competitive races if the Republicans choose to do that.
You're testifying on Monday in Arlington. What do you plan to tell the House committee?
Just that this is a racial rigged attempt to disenfranchise voters. You know, I have a minority-majority district, and if they try to pair them with 5 rural counties, that's not a commonality of interest. That's not a community of interest. That's not having somebody advocating for the unique needs of your community, and it's in violation of the Voting Rights Act. So it's what I intend to testify about, and just the gross politicization of this process as well.
The Voting Rights Act, though, I mean, that seems to have gone by the wayside. Of course, it can be argued in court. Do you think Republicans in the White House are even considering that?
I think Republicans in the White House they have demonstrated a consistent racist pattern of legislating and their policy making. And they would love to do away with the Voting Rights Act because it provides, electoral protections for communities of color and those that have not typically been in the power process. If you look at the history of our country, white men have been in charge for hundreds of years, and people of color and women are finally getting their seats at the table to have participation in the policy dialogue of this country. And Trump doesn't like that, and he's trying to create systems to kick everybody out. And I think the people aren't going to stand for it.
You were in the legislature the last time Democrats broke quorum and went to D.C. I remember that well.
Yeah,
I was up there too, but that delayed redistricting. It did not stop it. Did Democrats today in the legislature have any options at all to stop what's about to happen?
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on nationally that's different from when we broke quorum to protest Texas's voting rights bill. Because
like what? What's happening now, though?
Well, in 2021, it was a unique problem to Texas. It was about our residents voting. This redistricting effort is a national problem, and it affects Democrats and just the voters of this country all over the country. And so I think what you're seeing is a big national fight. If Texas does it, California's going to do it, New Jersey, Missouri. You're starting hearing all these states weigh in. And, elected Republicans in those states aren't happy about it. They don't want to, the California Republicans don't want to lose their seat because Texas is doing this ridiculous thing. And so I think you're going to see a lot more national pressure come to bear to maybe Speaker Johnson to see if they actually intervene on behalf of his members and say, no, we're not going to do this. And then I think secondly, a quorum break in this opportunity, in this situation, gives the opportunity for the thing to proceed through the courts to see if the courts are intervening. Because you have to remember, the Republicans in the state of Texas, in the Senate, in the House, and the governor's office, they have all been litigating the maps from 2020.
It's still in court in El Paso.
Oh yeah, it's in El Paso. And they have all sworn under oath 18,000 times, these maps were not racially biased, these maps are fair, they're perfect, they're most beautiful maps. And now they're like, oh, well, maybe they were racially biased, maybe we have to do this now. So They're completely contradicting their under oath sworn testimony about these maps. And I don't think the judges are going to be too happy about that.
Oh, the irony there.
Oh, yeah.
What do you expect to happen? The White House wants 5 seats here. Republicans tell me what's realistic, maybe 2 to 3 seats, flipping those. What do you think is realistic at the end of the day?
Well, you know the old adage, a pig gets fat and a hog gets butchered. You know, I think the more seats they go for, the more vulnerable they are in the 26 elections. But everything I've heard is the 5-seat map. Because you know, at the end of the day, you know, Trump knows, the White House knows that the policies that they have been cramming down the American people are not popular. They don't like all the Medicaid cuts. They don't like the SNAP cuts. They don't like the snatch and grab of U.S. citizens and throwing them into a detained center and off to another country. The complete obliteration of due process. The people are not happy with what they're doing, and they know that they're going to lose at the ballot box in 26. So they are doing everything they can to rig the elections to try to minimize that out. And they don't care about the individual Republican members and the individual people of the seats. They're just counting seats and numbers.
How concerned are you?
You know, I'm not, I mean, I'm concerned, obviously. I'm concerned for our democracy. Very concerned about that, about what's happening, about the disenfranchisement of voters. But for me personally, you know, if I have the opportunity to run for a seat, great. But, you know, I'm going to be fine either way. This isn't about Julie. This is about our national democracy and what our country is going forward. And that's the most important thing.
State lawmakers are looking for ways right now to address the deadly flash floods. You were on the Homeland Security Committee in D.C.
Right.
Is there a federal role at all to play in what we saw?
Absolutely. You know, the federal government needs to do its job. You know, this emergency response is a multi-level of government approach. The federal government has to do its job. One of the things is information. We have to have a robust National Weather Service, robust NOAA. We have to have all the pieces in place to provide the notification down to the lower levels. And what we've seen is the Trump administration fired the meteorologists who were responsible for coordinating and communicating the information. So, I mean, you can't, if the local officials don't get the information to hit the siren button, then their siren button isn't going to get hit. And so this is we've seen that with the floods, there was all kinds of problems at every level. You know, the state government, Abbott denying local grants, the local you know, leaders slow in requesting the information and the response and not wanting to accept money from the Biden administration, which was ridiculous. And it's an abdication of their responsibility to their
Money's still green.
constituents. I mean, come on.
Right.
I mean, whoever it is in office should not dictate whether or not the funds and the policy is going to benefit your community. That's ridiculous. And so, yeah, I think the federal government has a significant role.
Especially with safety.
Yes, and then FEMA response.
Here.
You know, we're the national coordinator. We coordinate because a lot of these disasters are multi-jurisdictional.
Right.
You know, they don't just hit one county. They hit multiple counties. They hit multiple states.
Yeah.
And the federal government has a definite role.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about a bill you filed, the Access to Home Ownership Act. And this gives renters credit for paying on time. You know, so when they buy a house, they're ready for that. You know, they get credit for that, for paying all that rent on time. What is the genesis of this?
Well, you know, we have a housing crisis in Texas, in North Texas, and in this country. And we have a huge barrier of access for people who are renters to go into home ownership and fulfill that American dream, you know. And so what this bill does is it creates pathways to develop credit, a credit rating, and credit security, and requires mortgage companies to consider a timely, accurate payment history on the rental process as an ability to pay under home ownership. And people are really excited about it. I think this is a great fix. One of many things that we can do to address the problem, and I'm really thrilled that we thought of it and we filed it and we're going to get it passed.
How did you think of it, though?
Just talking to folks, you know, you hear when you actually get out and talk to people and you listen to their stories of what's a struggle for them, and they think, you know, I'm a renter, I can't get my credit history up to buy a house, and you think, well, we can fix that, and we're going to do that. And
this would affect millions of Texans.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's going to affect millions of people across the country, just to be able, because, you know, in my district alone, 62% of my constituents are renters.
Wow.
And so I don't think people realize just how much of the population here in North Texas are renters versus homeowners, and we want to create pathways of opportunity for home ownership if they choose to want to go down that path. Not everybody wants to own a house, but for those that do, we want to create that opportunity and keep our housing market robust.
One last question here. Let me ask you about the big news of the day. Democrats are Democrats now pushing to get the Epstein files released. Should President Biden have done more to try to get those unsealed?
Yes, Merrick Garland should have released the Epstein files. Absolutely. You know, I think that the Biden administration dropped the ball on that, and they should have released them. They should be released now. The public deserves transparency. You know, everybody wants to know what's happened, and then quit talking about it. You know, and if crimes were occurred, prosecute them. Yes, the Epstein files should have been released.
What do you think's in there?
I have no idea. I haven't seen them. We'll find out eventually.
Congresswoman, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's great to see you.